Did you know that 90% of the world's millionaires invest in real estate? Well, I'm Angel with the Academy Presents Real Estate Investing Rocks, and I'm here to help you if you want to go for your piece of that pie.
Wow. And I would just think that the science behind all of that was really honed in because like in the, I guess, mid 2000s, like as far as like freezing eggs and doing all of those kinds of things, that technology wasn't the best. Like it could still be punctured by ice crystals and things like that. And I think that a lot of that technology and that science was really fixed and honed in, so that they had more options, for putting it off. And another thing we've seen, like what you're saying about, they want to boomerang back to the way they grew up. We have a house in Lubbock. My husband went to Texas Tech, and one of the things we've noticed is our renter has changed. Used to be we'd get grad students, we get other students that would want to live there. But a lot of those students are gravitating more now to the student housing with the granite countertops and the stainless steel appliances. And so we've just seen a renter change, like a demographic change in our renters, just because students go off to college, but they see these student housing buildings that are like what they grew up in. And so that I think it's affecting more than just aging millennial populations or other populations, because why wouldn't you want what you're comfortable with?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So it's been interesting. It's just different, I guess. So you mentioned this, the suburban office, and I had asked you about it before. So can you kind of describe the movement there that's going on?
Yeah. So kind of like what I was saying about the millennial generation relocating to a lot of these suburban markets, you know, demographics are destiny in commercial real estate. So going to where people are moving is going to impact commercial real estate across the spectrum, regardless if you're in doing single family homes, multifamily, self-storage, etc. So, one of the things that I think you're seeing play out with COVID is employers want to be where the employee and the human capital are moving to, right? And because pre-COVID, access to, the best employee base was the biggest challenge that business owners faced. And that hasn't really changed with COVID. So part of our investment thesis is, well, if all these people are moving there, you're going to start see employers want to capture that talent and have a footprint, have a physical presence. And so you started seeing that pre-COVID with Alliance Bernstein moving to Nashville, obviously everything that's happening in Austin, Texas from the tech side, to a lesser extent, the DFW Metroplex. And we just think that's going to accelerate with everything occurring with COVID in terms of, employers realizing, well, I'm just going to set up a hub and spoke model because I want my employees to be happy. They may not be in the office 5 days a week, but if they're in there 3 days a week, I want to be closer to where they are. And so that has proved to be a good play for us.
So how do you think that that's going to be affected by the fact that so many people have gone remote and proven it to be an effective model?
Yeah. So pre-COVID, about 4% of the workforce worked remotely. Clearly, in a post-COVID world, more than 4% is going to work remotely. But I think it's important to draw a distinction between remote work and work from home. Very few people can effectively work from home long term. And almost no employer wants 100% of their workforce to work from home long term. So I think what you're going to see is a hybrid model where, 2 or 3 days a week, you'll be in the office. And then 2 or 3 days a week, you'll have flexibility to work from home or work in a smaller office closer to where you live. But the mothership will no longer be where everybody is 100% of the time. That being said, this trend that we saw since the Great Recession up until COVID of massive densification, hot desking, hoteling, sharing tables, not having dedicated office space, clearly, regardless of where we are with the vaccine, it's going to shift the other direction where people are going to want more of a traditional office layout. And the office is going to function as a place where creativity, collaboration, teamwork can be celebrated. So you're going to want to have more flexibility there. And that's where suburban office really makes a lot of sense because, in some of these WeWork locations in New York City, for example, they were almost at 75 square feet per user, whereas a traditional office is 350 square feet per user. And so, given all that, I think it's going to be close to a wash, to be honest, for office. There'll be less people in there every day, but they'll be using more space than they were before.
I hadn't really thought of it that way.
Plus, if you're moving to a secondary market, and Texas is a great example, um, you know, it's a great place to live, a great place to work, but it has no public transportation. So you also need to park your employee base. And suburban office typically has very robust parking ratios that can handle the density, whereas a lot of these major metros simply do not.
They're just crunch for space.
Yeah, I mean, you realistically need 3 to 4 to 5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet to handle the density.
Now, is that regulated? Because like in, I don't like if you buy like a building, you have to have so many parking spaces per square feet. Is that regulated for other things also?
Yeah, it can be depending on the zoning for that location that they have to have a minimum parking ratio. But typically, these suburban locations will exceed any parking ratio that's required for zones or for codes or zoning.
Because they're not in very populous areas.
Right, that was the whole point.
Populated areas, yeah.
That's right.
Following, I'm catching on.
Yeah.
This is like just a new concept to me. And
Yeah.
I think it's for everybody. It's a new concept because I think that there was a big fear amongst people that had a lot of those WeWork locations that they weren't going to have any more WeWork people because as people were leaving those areas and working more from home, I think it got pretty tense for a while.
Yeah.
But the sustainability of working from home 24/7 is not there. Like I keep listening because I keep hearing my 5-year-old and my 12-year-old in the living room.
Yeah. Yeah. Very few people have the real setup at home to manage work from home long term, especially younger people that might live in a multifamily apartment building. They don't have a dedicated office space. It's just unrealistic. And if you think long term, how do you onboard a new employee? How do you build a corporate culture? How do you instill some kind of creative collaboration amongst your employee base? It's really challenging to do that over Zoom. And I think what most employers saw was that spike in productivity was based on fear of losing their job and the novelty associated with working from home. And that was really April, May, June. But as we got through summer and started hitting Labor Day, burnout was real, isolation was real, lack of productivity, lack of focus, depression in some instances was real. And so I think something in the middle makes a lot of sense. I think we all suffer from recency bias where we think, well, what we lived the last 6 months is how we're going to live the next 6 years. But the reality is probably somewhere in the middle, right? We can take a lot of positives that came from working from home and incorporate them into our daily life. But I don't think this is going to be a secular decline like we've seen in retail. I think the office is still going to be a big part of our professional life moving forward.
Well, like when you talk about onboarding people, like a college here that I've taught for in the past reached back out to me. They're like, "Hey, Angel, can you teach a couple of our econ classes in the spring?"
Yeah.
Well, as soon as I said yes, I had all paperwork in, we were exposed to COVID. We were isolated not once, but twice. So for about 4 weeks there. And so I couldn't train. And our semester starts in 14 days. And I still have not been able to meet with the other people that I'm going to be working with. And it's impossible, really. I need to be able to go to the location so that he can walk me through everything because it's changed since I taught there last. And so, people that are able to train VAs through Zoom, kudos to them because I need face-to-face interaction and I need to see what people are typing and doing. And so the effectiveness of, it'd be a pivot, but in current, the effectiveness of training people and onboarding people over Zoom isn't very effective, I don't believe.
Yeah, I agree. I think most people would agree with you.
So
I think there are some positions, if you're a programmer or a long-standing employee or accounting, there are certain roles that do well. But if you're in any kind of business development, marketing, sales, executive leadership, I just don't think it's realistic. And frankly, many companies have tried this over the last 50 years. IBM, GE. I mean, this is a fad that comes around every 10 or 20 years and it never sticks. And there's a reason.
I think people go to work for the companies they go to work for because they love the culture there.
And I think people want that separation from their life and their personal life and their business life to some extent. They don't want to necessarily get off the computer and walk into their kitchen and deal with, their spouse or their kids. They like to have that. There's a reason that we've set it up this way. So
yeah, well, I know, like when I got out to go check on the rehab with the GC today, I hung out with a real estate guy, our manager, even after my husband went back to work, because it was like, hey, there was a house down there with a sign on it. You want to look at it?
yeah, I mean, we're social creatures. We're meant to be in groups for the most part. So I think
so
that
it's
we'll see a return to that.
Yeah, definitely just the idea of having that break, because it gets tough being being the parent, being the teacher, which I say that really loosely because people who are like, oh, I'm homeschooling. No, somebody else is still developing the curriculum. You're just teaching what they're putting together.
Yeah.
So it's and that comes back from me being a teacher. So I don't ever want to like steal that from my fellow teachers, because they're still putting in a lot of hours and a lot of time, and yeah, they deserve credit for all of that.
Absolutely.
But so, holy night, what made you move from being a lawyer into what you're doing now?
Well, part of it was certainly the entrepreneurial bug. I wanted to start a company, run a company, see what that experience looked like. And I also wanted more flexibility and financial freedom. The legal profession is one where the value you create for the enterprise is a function of how much time you spend on something. Whereas I really wanted to work in an industry where the value you create for your enterprise is based on the product that you create or how good of a job you do on something. Didn't necessarily want it to be tied to how many hours I spent working per se. And I thought it was a bad business model. So that was certainly part of the inclination. And real estate, to your conversation earlier, to your point earlier, it's a low barrier to entry business. So you end up connecting with a lot of interesting people. And I love that part of the business, that you're constantly networking, you're constantly on the phone, pre-COVID meeting with people. And I really like that component of it where every day is different. And that really catered to my personality in a lot of ways.
So is your focus on secondary markets, is it based in the fact that you're looking for more suburban areas?
It's really a function of trying to solve for yield. For us, we're trying to solve for that 8 to 10% cash on cash yield. And to do that without being over levered or taking on too much risk, secondary markets provide a very nice, safe place to kind of solve for that cash on cash yield. And so part of what we do is we obviously want some upside and appreciation, but we want day one cash flow. And in order to do that, we're cap rate driven. And that means that we just can't invest in places like Nashville because the pricing is too aggressive. That plus this investment thesis that we saw with this millennial demographic shift, because my partner and I are kind of part of that population, we thought it dovetailed really nicely into, a way to build a platform.
That's really nice. So when you were creating your company, how did you jump into that? Like, how did you one day say, hey, I'm going to create a company. Hey, want to be my partner?
Yeah. I mean, it was a side hustle at first that we dabbled in at night and on the weekends. And that at a certain point, based on conversations I've had with mentors and others in the industry, you kind of have to burn the ships and cross the Rubicon and just go all in. And I hit a point where I knew I didn't want to keep practicing law. And so luckily I had the family cushion to afford me the opportunity to go and really do it full time. And it was really scary and took a lot of work. And there was a long time before we made any money, but and I was fortunate to be young and didn't appreciate the risk I was taking probably. But there's no playbook there. Everyone's going to be a little bit different, but that was my journey.
Yeah. Well, and saying that, when my husband and I got our first rental house, like it was the first house we bought, and we knew from day one this is going to be a rental. And the first renter we had in it just trashed, left all her stuff behind, rent dodged in the middle of the night. It cost us like $500 just to get her stuff taken out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up in a real estate family. He grew up in a real estate family. And so we were just like, all right, on to the next. I have another friend here that they PCS, which is like a permanent change of station in the military, and they rented their house while they were gone. Came back, their house was trashed. They had to redo a bunch of stuff, and they were like, we'll never rent again. And so I think it comes back to that idea of, where are you at in your journey? And what is it that you've had previously that makes your journey the way it is? Because if I hadn't seen those kind of flops happen to my grandparents, and if Jason hadn't seen those kind of flops happen to his parents, we might have bailed on that first one because we weren't prepared for that.
Yeah. You build up a lot of scar tissue, mistakes being made, and that's part of the entrepreneur's journey is the adventure, the reality, and then hopefully the redemption.
Yeah. So I also saw that you did some work in venture capital. What's that like?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not my focus, but it is a focus for the family. We've been investing in the venture capital space for 25, 35 years. And so I am on a board of a venture fund, and I do help on a very high level keep track of what we're doing on the venture side, but it's not my space at all. It's frankly too risky for me. I don't like it. Makes me nervous, but we've had some success, and we have people in the family that we work with that really know what they're doing in that space. So
that's cool. So how does it translate from like venture capital to like impact investing and impact capital?
Yeah. So impact investing is basically trying to do well and do good. So you're trying to still make money, but you're trying to have some form of positive impact through the investments you're making. It's a very squishy term. Nobody really knows exactly what it means. People use like double bottom line business or triple bottom line business, social capital, impact investing. But it's a trend line that we've seen where, you've got these two different buckets historically of, investing for purely capital appreciation and investments. And then you've got charitable giving and foundations. And this is really those two different components coming together to form, one style of investing.
Wow. Well, you're an absolute wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me on. I've probably got another 5 minutes or so before I have to jump to another call, but I'm happy to help any way that I can. And if anybody's interested in learning more about what we're doing, or if they just want advice about how to start a company, how to capital raise, maybe what not to do, because I certainly have made a lot of mistakes, feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn or through the website, excelsiorcapitalgp.com. And I'm happy to make time and chat about anything you want to.
Awesome. So guys, like I've said before, the people in this space are amazing and they're helpful, and they don't want to keep pushing you down. They want to give you a hand and help you up. And I've worked in a lot of different spaces, and this is the most positive group of people that I think I've ever been surrounded by.
Yeah, it's fun. And I think, especially on the LinkedIn community, I think you're right. I mean, people just want to help, and it's not a zero-sum game. I mean, the more people I help, the more good karma I create, the more people keep me in mind or for my own business. This is a really nice way to do business. So yeah, I mean, people like you with your show and what you're doing and trying to educate people and provide a free resource. I know sometimes in the middle of it, it can seem like really daunting and you're not making a big difference. But the way I think about it, people kind of always say, well, what would you mark as success? And if I can help inspire other people to start a company, and if I can have my employees come to me and say, hey, I want to start my own thing and take all the lessons I've learned here. And if I can do that, and at the end of my life, I've helped create 100 new jobs or created, quality of life for a number of families, I think that's a really powerful legacy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So again, if you want to reach out to him, he is on LinkedIn. And then your website was, what was it again?
ExcelsiorCapitalGP.com. You can sign up for the newsletter. But the best way is probably just to message me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk and chat about anything you want. I'm very active on it. So.
And it's Brian C. Adams.
Yep.
On LinkedIn.
That's right. Brian C. Adams, Excelsior Capital. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing all of your massive knowledge with our audience. And I hope you have a great day, great rest of your day. And guys, I will see y'all next time.
Thank you for having me.